hand, keep their quote-unquote promise to deliver bodies of hostages, and the other hand, of course, to prolong this whole process. As we have said, 5 bodies is not enough, and I am thinking just about Hadar Golden. He has been held as a body, of course, in Gaza since 14 years ago. They should know where his place is, where he's buried, or where his body is. He should be brought back to Israel very, very early in this stage of the exchange, but I'm not seeing that happening, and I guess that they are keeping him to be the last. They even intend to give his body back to Israel. This is happening while we're getting reports from that tomorrow the Rafah crossing will be open for humanitarian aid.
Thanks
and
for joining
also
in.
for people
Like
in
and
Gaza
subscribe.
that want to exit the Strip and people that want to enter the Gaza Strip. This is very important. This is a crucial step in this whole deal because, of course, this is what Hamas wants. They need this humanitarian aid. Israel has been conditioning the return of the bodies with the steps toward, completing the first phase of the deal. This is happening. Let's just hope that the bodies will just come back as well.
Your sense on how this is likely to unfold?
Well, just a quick comment. I can't gainsay the statements of the hostage family members, nor would I dream of doing so. But I do want to put a couple of points across. The first point is that it's remarkable, not only Donald Trump's attachment to this issue, but also the terminology he used. He regularly spoke of our hostages. The viewers might remember that there was a question after Dan Alexander came back, the last living American citizen, whether he would stay so attached, so focused on this issue. And also, there was a lot made about the idea that Prime Minister Netanyahu was interested in bringing back the hostages. And all through the war, he expressed very clearly, and this happened on his watch, he will have to conjure with that. Everybody recognizes that. Hopefully he does as well. But all through the war, he said that he was dedicated to bringing back the hostages and he was dedicated to crushing Hamas. And he thought that only military pressure would bring about the return of our loved ones. Now, he withstood enormous international pressure, enormous domestic pressure in order to keep the boot on the neck of Hamas. We remember we were told, can't go into Rafah, he went. We were told you can't go to Gaza City, went. I think that he does deserve some credit here. Of course, he's also ultimately responsible for the disaster that occurred on October the 7th. But you have to give credit where it's due. He did not relent from the task.
Benjamin Anthony, Vivian Bokovici, and Balir Sladin, I wish we had more time, but thank you all so much for your insights into this ever-developing situation. We watch to see how it all unfolds. The nation continues to watch and to hope. Thank you so much. Meanwhile, despite the fact that a ceasefire is in place and despite the fact that the US president has announced that the war in the Middle East is over, Palestinian protesters continue to take to the streets across the globe. Our Michelle Hickey has the story. Take a look.
Between Israel and Hamas, a fragile peace agreement put an end to more than 700 days of bloody warfare and led to the immediate release of 20 living Israeli hostages and nearly 2,000 Palestinian security prisoners. But in other parts of the world, storming the streets in the name of the pro-Palestine movement. Just Tuesday night, thousands of demonstrators marched in a city in the north of Italy before the country's World Cup football qualifier against Israel. More than 5,000 people participated in the march, who responded with water cannons and tear gas. For these protesters, the ceasefire, hostage release, and prisoner swap isn't enough.
There has been a ceasefire, but not peace. As I wrote on the sign, there can be no peace without justice. So we need to recognize the state of Palestine as a first step, or rather as the very first step, open the border crossings and let the aid through, and then everything else will follow.
It's not just Italy. For those who have long been part of the pro-Palestine movement, like this US-based Palestinian artist, they say that the war did not start on October 7th, and that we're still a long way.
This didn't just start for us 2 years ago. We've known this since we've known how to speak. So peace is very, very, very hard to even think about without justice. No justice, no peace. If we don't get justice, there's no such thing as a peace. This is putting a Band-Aid on an artillery shell wound.
taking a deeper look at the trauma of October 7th, more than 2 years since the darkest day in the history of Israel. Our Joe Brown brings us this report on a special resilience unit set up to support volunteers, the Zaka response team, who spent days clearing up the scene of the massacre. Take a look.
We came to houses, we saw the blood, how much blood, like a river from blood, from house, a whole family. It was...
I saw a part of a body. From all the body that was there, a human body that got burned, so this kind of part just left over there. And this is the first knockout that you get, because it's too imaginary to understand. Your brain started to work on a different level.
The October 7th.
How you doing, Melvin? Thanks for joining in, Melvin. Thank you.
None more so than those who witnessed the horrors.
Deontay Red and Ray podcast show. Appreciate it.
Scene. You have one scene, you take care of it. That's it. We came there, we don't know where to start, you know. Every person is a scene for himself. The horrors there, that what they do for, it's like they have some list what to do for everyone they face.
There is two things. First, we may not come back. Like 99% we may not come back. And the second thing, that if we come back, you won't gonna be the same again.
Yitzhak and Razi are long-serving volunteers for Zaka, a humanitarian organisation that helps clear up disaster sites, such as car crashes or terror attacks, preserving the bodies in accordance with Jewish law. They arrive at the scenes of medical emergencies within October the 7th was no different.
We got involved with the active shooting with several terrorists from Gaza. We started shooting back. We killed 2 of them. And at the next car that I came to treat, one of the bodies was my neighbor, my next door neighbor from Givon.
But the atrocities they witnessed changed them.
You started to understand weeks after what is trauma and what is post-trauma. I've been unemployed since then for almost 2 years. No salary, no income. Since the war till now, I lost about 250 grand just to stay living.
Every time I go into a scene, I leave Zaka outside their house. I don't bring it home. And there I could not shake it.
And bringing it into their homes can really affect their relationships with their loved ones.
He doesn't have the joy he used to have. Being at home is no longer fun. He sleeps most of the time, and if he doesn't sleep, then he's awake at night. The relationship isn't the same.
Peace for everybody,
Family isn't
man.
the same.
Peace for
The
everybody.
girls ask me from time to time, does Dad love us?
The people who saw the horrors in the few days after the war are united in their experience and the desire to fix their trauma.
Every one of the families, of course, and the first responders were exposed to a cruelty that is beyond words, and it's something that makes a scar.
Vera Datsmon Meshulam is a clinical psychologist specialising in trauma. Her role in the days following October the 7th was to help families identify the beaten, tortured, and often charred remains of their loved ones. Speaking to Zaka volunteers at the time, she uncovered a need for an extraordinary level of psychological treatment. So in coordination with the group, she launched the Zaka Resilience Unit, a method of providing specialist care to volunteers who had witnessed an unprecedented level of barbarity.
I started to develop a new protocol that combines psychological evidence-based tools with Jewish practical practices that can help people to process the trauma. I'm working with these tools with the Zaka's volunteers because I think that the cultural point of view that combines psychotherapy with their cultural background makes it very powerful.
The method takes remnants of tried and tested therapy methods, such as breathing techniques and combined with traditional elements of Judaism, including prayers and singing. Not only are the sessions held with fellow Zaka volunteers who have suffered from PTSD, there is also couples therapy, which gives the wives of the volunteers a chance to help their husbands in their struggle.
After you told us we need to go to talk to each other, after that, I don't know, something was more open. Like a switch would stop. You felt more open and free to talk about things. Yes.
And it lets their husbands speak about their struggles out loud.
So I close myself because if nobody can understand, I don't know what to share. And we need to share the wives also to give them the tools. They will understand what we say.
This war has introduced a generation of people suffering from PTSD.
There you go.
But with initiatives such as Zaka's Resilience Unit, these people can start their road to recovery, and their loved ones can enjoy being with them at their best once again.
After you go to the first group, I saw the changes in behavior. It was more calmly, and he has more patience for everybody.
It's not going back to how bad it was. There is no deterioration in the situation, which is also a blessing. I believe in him. I believe that it will get better. It will take time.
To Moscow now, Russian President Vladimir Putin is meeting with Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, at the Kremlin in their first encounter. A year ago, the two, of course, were bitter enemies on opposite sides of Syria's brutal civil war. Today, the meeting and the future of their relationship could have major implications for the balance of power in the Middle East. Now, at the start of the meeting, the Russian president congratulating his Syrian counterpart on the fact that parliamentary elections were held earlier this month, adding that Moscow is ready for stronger ties with Damascus. Take a listen.
I'm thankful to you for welcoming our delegation from various departments that was headed by Deputy Prime Minister Novak. Many interesting and useful initiatives were voiced. From our side, we are ready to do everything to implement them, as well as regular contacts and agreements via foreign ministries. We are very glad to see you.
There are historical ties, and there are also bilateral relations and common interests that connect us. Many things connect. Of Syria's food supply relies on Russian production, and numerous power stations depend on Russian expertise. Many strategic and political relations, both regional and international, are closely linked to Russia. We respect all past agreements and this rich history, and we are working to redefine the nature of these relations.
So for more insight, we now welcome Ariel Cohen, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council and founder of the International Market Analysis Organization, joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for your time. Of course, Russia has his closest allies for decades now. Vladimir Putin was a major backer of Bashar al-Assad, but now the man who ousted the longtime dictator is at the helm. So what do you make of Putin's attempt to cement ties with the new leader?
This is a classic realpolitik. Countries don't have permanent friends, they have permanent interest. Russian interest is to have naval bases in the Mediterranean. Since the times of Catherine the Great in the second half of the 18th century, the Russian Navy tried to establish itself, mostly unsuccessfully, in the Mediterranean. Syria has been the Russian foothold in the Levant, in the Sham, as they say in Arabic, Eastern Mediterranean, for decades. Syria, on the other hand, doesn't want to be fully dependent on Turkey, on Qatar, and on the United States. I'm sure there's a lot of people in Washington who are not happy with this talk about Russia continuing to exploit their bases in Khmeimim, the air base, and in Latakia for the Russian Navy. We shall see after the Ukraine war, after Ukraine destroyed a big chunk of the Black Sea fleet, and the Mediterranean squadron is a part of the Black Sea, can Russia really deploy meaningful assets?
Thanks for joining in Deontay Rating Rate Podcast Show. Thank you.
Rule of thumb is from being a lifelong student and observer.
Like and subscribe.
Russian military power. Never.
Peace for everybody. Peace to everybody. Love.
Never underestimate the Kremlin, and certainly remarkable images there. The footage of these two leaders inside the Kremlin. The optics are fascinating, and of course we know Bashar al-Assad fled for Moscow when those rebels descended on Syria. Isn't he believed to still be there? And What do these meetings in the Kremlin mean for the longtime dictator? Your thoughts?
I would be very, very nervous if I was Bashar. I would consider relocating maybe
Thanks for
to
subscribing.
Tehran
Thanks for
or some other
subscribing.
place, maybe Pyongyang, because he was poisoned. There were credible reports
Thanks for
that Bashar was
subscribing.
poisoned, and maybe this was the way to get him out of the way, or he would go meet Sir Isaac Newton, meaning he'll fall out of the window and experience the power of gravity. That didn't happen, but I think Ashara, by putting his cards on the table and demanding the extradition of Bashar back to Syria to stand trial, maybe he is putting Putin at a place that Putin is not comfortable with, because Putin took pride of
Peace to everybody.
protecting
Peace to
assets,
everybody. Love
those who
everybody.
work for Russia, be it American defectors like Snowden, be it former pro-Russian presidents of Kyrgyzstan or Ukraine like Yanukovych. So I don't think Putin will be very comfortable packaging, wrapping Assad up, putting him on a plane to Damascus. On the other hand, if he really, really wants this military, things can happen to Bashar Assad in Moscow.
Very briefly, we only have 30 seconds left. If Israel is watching these images, how worried should it be about these meetings underway as we speak? Briefly, please.
Israel should always be worried about its security, and especially as Turkey and Russia, two countries that are not great friends of Israel, are strengthening their position in Syria, as Qatar, also not a friend of Israel, is bankrolling Ashara. Israel should be very worried and do all steps necessary, including talking to Ashara directly and telling Ashara, we can cut a deal if you stick to a deal. On the other hand, we all know what a deal with an Islamist means these days in the Middle East.
Ariel Cohen, live from DC. Thank you so much, as always. And that is a wrap. I'm Benita Levine. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned.
As Israel suffers attacks on 7 different fronts, it's her poor and elderly who are barely making it through each day.
Same analysis, and I got the exact same result. African American males, when they get the MMR on time, are 3.5 times more likely to get an autism diagnosis than if you wait simply until after 3 years.
So that would show a link. And again, I think
that is correct.
The important part of this story is not only that, but the fact that you had federal health agency officials destroy evidence of that fact. They gathered everybody in office, right? And they literally all brought the evidence and they destroyed it together, except for Dr. Thompson. He kept the evidence, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Ms. Tarsal, as I said in the opening statement, Dr. Joel Walscott talked about just being abandoned. Can you talk about your experience following your daughter's tragedy?
There was total disbelief in what happened. I was home alone when a police officer came to my house to tell me they found my daughter dead in her bed and they didn't know what happened. It took quite a while for us to begin to put the pieces together. And I understand from the other panelists here that initially one would never suspect it was vaccine related because we've been told they're safe and effective. And
Giving you guys random update what's going on for today.
Designed to prevent.
It's about the vaccines, how vaccines can cause injury. And Parker can sue them.
Other people At the time, Gardasil had only been licensed 2 years before. So at the time, there was little literature known online, but I began to connect with other parents and moms and researchers online. It's like, there's a whole lot that we're not being told. And that's devastating, to not be informed, to make, and as I found out it, that we were never told. My daughter never needed that vaccine. She was never at risk of getting cervical cancer. The risk is very low. The HPV is clear on their own. And I'm not the only mom.
Once again, it's Deontay Red and Ray podcast show, giving you guys different updates, what's going on.
They haven't even been able to show that the vaccine causes any cancer that's HPV related. And there's a whole reason for that, because these cancers are very slow growing.
I'm on iHeart Radio and Spotify as well.
So they're giving
like
it
and
to
subscribe.
young
Thanks for joining
adolescents.
in.
It was like, I just was blown away. I could not imagine that they would have approved
Pure
these
blood here.
vaccines
I didn't
and
get
would
the
continue
shot.
to do so. And to have Merck lie on their report. The other thing that's come up here in these conversations is people talking about the VAERS reports. That's the first line to determine if there are red flags for injuries after vaccination. And that is a very, very flawed system. I had no idea at the time. But I have learned that, as I said in my talk, that less than 1% get reported. One of the doctors on the panel said he never learned about it in medical school, and they still don't. And how can this be? This is crazy. This is the front line to determine if there are vaccine injuries. And so I've been, I feel my daughter is here with me. I'm her voice. I am trying to make her death matter. I know of all these other moms who have lost their kids through various vaccines, but HPV vaccine in particular. There were 6 other mothers I was connected with back in 2008 who had lost their daughters. Thank God I had support and the ability to find out more. And that's why I'm here. I want to share it with other people. We all want the best for our kids.
Thank you. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you very much. And I want to agree with the chairman that we have an obligation to be constructive and understand and respect the losses that have occurred here. There's nothing antagonistic about the emotion that I feel, and I respect not just the losses, but the urgings for reform that have come from our witnesses and probably others in the audience who suffered those losses. I'm a lawyer, prosecutor for most of my life. Destruction of documents is absolutely abhorrent. It should be investigated and pursued, condemned, if there has been destruction of documents. I think we can all agree on that point. We have a system, and it dates from
Thanks for joining in. Thanks for subscribing.
years ago, the National
Also hit that
Vaccine
like
Injury
button.
Compensation Program. Dr. Hooker, I think you made reference to it. It's legal immunity, a shield for manufacturers. Now, I am extremely suspicious as a lawyer of immunity that is granted in any blanket way across the board to any manufacturer or to anyone. Whether it is any industry. And I would be interested to know whether others among our witnesses here today have sought to pursue claims under that program. I understand you did, Dr. Hooker, correct?
That is correct, Senator.
For some 16 years.
16 years, that's correct.
And you got no relief.
We had absolutely no relief whatsoever. Neither were we allowed oral arguments.
So maybe we ought to look at this system. You know,
agreed.
I am not suggesting what should be done about it. I don't know whether you have legislation, Mr. Chairman, on this program.
We're still in the exploratory phase here.
Okay. So, you know, I'm a lawyer. I'm very result oriented. And I am heartbroken to hear these stories. It makes me want to do something. So, I'm not promising anything. So you might want to hold your applause.
How about we ban pharmaceutical ads on TV? I'll co-sponsor that bill.
I've advocated it, and you have a co-sponsor. Remember that I'm the state attorney general who helped to lead the lawsuit against big tobacco. When that industry denied that smoking caused cancer or any other disease. In fact, some tobacco manufacturers actually advertised that it was good for you to smoke. And they knew at the time, talk about destruction of records, that tobacco addiction, nicotine addiction, and smoking caused cancer. They knew it from their own experiments. They hid it, and then they actually destroyed records. And that is one of the reasons why we won that set of lawsuits when people said
thanks for joining
no one
in.
could ever win.
Like and subscribe.
That in effect, they were immune. I don't really think any industry should be immune from legal responsibility. And I'm not going to go into the other industries because I don't want to muddy the waters here. But I would be interested in looking at whether appropriate and whether, for example, the injury table ought to include other kinds of problems that allegedly are caused, and I use the word allegedly as a lawyer, by problems with vaccines. I am not a scientist.
Thanks for joining in. I'm gonna have other videos, longer videos, and reaction videos. Just giving you random updates with live video that's going on with this world. It's going crazy with Gaza, with these vaccines coming out saying they not all effective. And situation happened with Charlie Kirk. Got the Freedom Medal. Blessings, happy birthday. Rest in peace. Like and subscribe. Thanks for joining in.
And so I really can't leap to any sort of conclusions here. And that's why in courtrooms we have expert testimony. And lawyers are reprimanded if they testify. So I'm not doing it here. But I do think that we need to be responsible in the way we talk about this issue. not to belittle any claims on one side or the other. And I just want to ask you, Ms. Murata, whether you have talked to families or individuals who've been affected by measles, whether you have found they've been discouraged from using the vaccine, and what you advise.
Thank you for your question, Senator Blumenthal. So at Vaccinate Your Family, we do work with patient advocates that have been impacted like mine, like my story. One particular measles story comes to top of mind for me. His name is Joshua. At the age of 30, he caught measles. He thought he had been vaccinated. He had asked his mother when he got sick, "Hey mom, was I vaccinated?" And he found out that he wasn't. He caught measles at his sister's college graduation and ended up in the hospital. Thankfully, he survived, but he had a really long road to recovery. So what we're seeing right now with outbreaks of measles is obviously very concerning to me as a parent. We again want people to have the right information about how they can protect themselves and their families. I don't know personally of any story where someone was discouraged from reporting an injury, so I can't speak to that.
Thank you. My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting on this hearing. And, father of 5, 3 grandkids. In fact, my daughter is visiting me today and last night in D.C. Normally I get an alarm clock, but this morning I got a cute little 18-month-old face in front of me to wake me up. So to all of you, I can't even, you say that you can relate. I can't even imagine what you're going through, and we have to figure out a way forward. So let me just, I think it's important.
Thanks for joining in.
That we look at where
It's
we
about the
were,
vaccines, how they not
to
effective.
So I think most Americans expect that when you get on a plane, you buy a car, you get on an elevator, you eat a meal, that there's a standard of care that company used, and if they didn't use the standard of care, that you have a path to get some sort of compensation for the lack of effort. I think most of us kind of expect that. So when we say anything is safe, there's nothing that's 100% safe, impossible. But what's interesting about this industry is that the government has decided that this industry gets a free pass. That this particular industry doesn't have to be liable to anybody. And to our ranking member, I'm glad that you're interested in these things. I think that's fantastic. But President Biden, or the auto pen, extended immunity for these pharmaceutical companies for 5 years, and then we're at the door. How does that happen? On December 11th, 2024, with no public notice, snap of an auto pen, liability is extended through 2029. So you look at it and you go, well, how does all this happen? And I think we also have to recognize that there was a lot of people who, for example, I'm sure for you, Dr. Sullivan, for you, Dr. Hooker, for many of you, when you even said, hey, is this a problem? You were banned on social media. No, okay, let's say that's not the worst thing that can happen to you in the world. But then the Biden administration then took it further and said, you can't go to work and make a living because your employer must either force you to be vaccinated, force you to reveal your public medical information.
Pure blood here, no vaccine. The ones who got it, I pray.
That's a
But I didn't get no
very
vaccine.
different thing. And yet, complete silence. And so if we're going to go forward, I think we have to acknowledge where we were in the past, because what happened during those years was something that this country's never seen. A slide towards a government that's supposed to derive its power from the consent of the governed, was terminating people, working with social media companies that says, if Miss Tommy, if you put this post on, you can put a post that says, I think Senator Marino's tie is ugly. totally fine. This was the FBI knocks on your door. You're deleted from social media. The White House was bringing tech companies to the White House saying, hey, we're going to work together to squash any dissent. This goes far beyond an informed decision that a parent has to make. It's tough, by the way. I tell my kids this all the time. My two daughters that have kids, being a mom or dad is hard. You have to make decisions for another human being. But where's the relationship with the government saying this is what you will do? And if you don't do these things, there's going to be severe consequences. So I'm all for going forward, but there has to be a humility of looking backwards over the period of time in COVID and realize that our government did real damage to real people. From closing schools to forced vaccinations to the shunning, public shaming of people. So to my Democrat colleagues, I get it. I was a private citizen up until 6 months ago. But what motivated me to come here to Washington, D.C. to serve this country was because our government lost its ever living mind over the last 4 or 5 years.
Preach.
So on a go-forward basis, there's some obvious things. Why don't we treat the pharmaceutical industry like any other business? You make a car that kills somebody, you're liable. Now, by the way, as a former car dealer, driving a car safe. Okay? But will a car have an accident? Of course. Flying, you can do. But are there accidents? Of course. But why are we exempting certain industries? And of course, then you start thinking, well, what's the money that goes into it? When you go to make a decision for your child, is a doctor actually being a fair arbiter? Or are they thinking, hey, there's a pharmaceutical rep that's going to pay me based on how many vaccines I prescribe, how many prescriptions I fill? That's a whole different world. And we've seen it not just on vaccines, but the family that controlled Purdue Pharma, they're on a beach somewhere, and they're billionaires. And they left tens of thousands of people in my state, Ohio, dead. Where's the justice for those people? So if we're going to do this, Mr. Chairman, to our ranking member, we need to get serious about understanding that there's a lot of entanglements.
Thanks for joining
between
in.
Special interest groups, lobbyists, with zero accountability.
Like and subscribe.
Because finding Purdue Pharma did nothing for the Sackler family. Sackler family are still living a great life. And the people who profited severely from the COVID-19 vaccine are living a great life. They're not sitting here like all of you having a different conversation. So if we're going to do something, the North Star has got to be medical freedom. I get to decide. I get to decide what's good for me and my family with proper information. And if I'm given improper information, just like in any other industry, there's got to be accountability. And these industries that produce bad behavior, the executives, the people who charge those people to do these bad things have got to feel personal repercussions. Because if that's not the guidepost in which we do this, then all we're going to do is have wasted these great people's time. So I'll end where I started. I'm hoping that, Chairman, what comes out of this is actual progress. Because when I hear your stories, it breaks my heart, and I know it's a death sentence a life sentence for all of you. This isn't something where tomorrow you snap your fingers and your emotions leave you. It's going to be with you, and I can see the pain in each and every one of you. And I'm hoping my colleagues see that pain and that we actually move the ball forward to get something done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Marino. So Ms. Tommy, when I'm watching the video, and I watch the one mom whose child died of SIDS, describing her SIDS support group, and every parent was talking about the vaccine. And my guess is none of their doctors talked about a vaccine. They just called it SIDS. When the other woman, the last woman whose child died, and the doctor was asking about the vaccines, when she asked the doctor, would you put that in writing? The doctor said, no. in your testimony, you said when you went to your doctor, talking about how your child, how Bill was having seizures. Well, that's perfectly normal. That's common. I mean, I find that jaw-dropping.
Yeah, and it's the same story over and over again. And in fact, it is
That's
common.
what I want to ask you.
Because it's on the insert of the MMR vaccination. On the insert, in bold letters, the seizure. So it is common. The pharmaceutical company have told us in the insert. It's the paediatricians that don't tell us what could happen to our front line for us with our babies. And we trust them.
By the way, what is the truth? Because I hear back and forth. I mean, do pediatricians get incentivized with percent vaccination of their...
Yes. Dr. Paul Thomas has done a very good video on that, and many other paediatricians have followed. Maybe Dr. Hooker could answer better on that.
They're typically incentivized directly by HMOs. HMOs buy and sell vaccines are big businesses for HMOs, but the incentivization is usually vaccination.
So when we look at the history of vaccination, smallpox was so successful that it's not even on the schedule anymore. It was a success. Then followed vaccinations to bacterial toxoids. That's the DTP vaccines. And then there was vaccination to viruses, MMR. And you talk about polio. That was a great cure in my mother's time. And we know...
Sorry about
I haven't
that.
seen these cases. I've seen maybe 2 cases of pertussis in my career, and I read about measles. I've never seen it. I wouldn't recognize these things. So we know from experience it's successful. What we're missing, though, and this is not taught in medical school, is there's a cost to this success. There's a cost to manufacturing the medicine and the research. There's a cost to administer it. And there is the hidden cost of injuries, and we do not know what that is. It is not studied. It's not taught. Senator Johnson, does that answer your question?
Sort of.
Okay.
Sort of.
Well, I want to be clear, too, and I'm not vaccine injured. I'm injured by an mRNA therapeutic. I was very careful in my testimony to use the word shot.
So while I have you, because again, I was warned early on because I was talking to people highly skeptical of the mRNA. Mm-hmm. One doctor beside himself, understanding what his colleagues were going to do, inject something into the human body that would turn the human cell into a manufacturing site for something that's toxic to his body. It's like, gee, what could go wrong?
Yes.
You know, encapsulated in a lipid nanoparticle designed to permeate, difficult to permeate blood-brain, like the placenta. You knew it wasn't. They knew it wouldn't. They knew it didn't stay in the arm, and yet they lied to us.
Oh, they lied to us.
That
was not told at the time.
So again, I would say that a doctor telling his Tommy that a seizure after a vaccination is perfectly normal.
No,
that's a lie.
Yes.
I mean, it's a jaw-dropping lie. But talk about the spike protein, because what I'm seeing is everybody, it's all being blamed on long COVID. You know, the brain fog, it's all about long COVID. Once again, complete state of denial. Well, the nasty part of the coronavirus is the spike protein.
Yes.
That is the antigen that the mRNA injection caused the body to produce.
Yes, it's a biologically active
Duh,
molecule.
so maybe it's the vaccine that's causing the brain fog, the neurological injuries, and the death, and the strokes, and the I can't remember what it's called, the lining inside your blood vessels. I mean, that's, I think, your problem, right?
Vasculitis, yes.
Yeah.
Inflammation of vessels.
So talk a little bit about what you found out now that you've done your research in terms of the spike protein, and when you've got, at least in the virus, it hopefully would clear, but with the mRNA, it's not real mRNA, it's modified. It's modified to not be destroyed by the body, to keep circulating. Now we have studies that the mRNA, that modified mRNA, it's circulating in the body for months. We haven't done that in much studies to find out how long, but we're finding it in tumors, we're finding it in other autopsy body parts, that type of thing. Can you just talk about that, and then we'll turn it back over to Senator Blumenthal.
You're correct. There are many ways to lose with this new mRNA technology. There are problems with there is a separate
Thanks for joining in. Like and subscribe.
Synthetic mRNA, it persists.
Deontay Red and Ray podcast
700
show.
days and counting now. There will always be a problem when you load the instructions to make a protein, in that it will present on the surface of the cell and will become a setup for autoimmune disorders. Separate from that, spike protein in and of itself is biologically active. And to understand what happened to my injury, I found researchers who had predicted this was going to happen. It causes cells to grow and divide when they should not. It was published in December 2020, although not widely known, that was causing damage to placenta and to lung. I was probably one of the very few doctors that knew that shot did not stay in the arm, and I don't even know how I found that information, but I would say that was virtually unknown, and later I found this out to be true. I only found out spike protein was toxic later when I met the researchers, and I asked, how did you think to research that? Because they knew in 2005 with SARS-1 that spike protein alone, without the virus, would be enough to harm an animal.
Wow.
Later, in the research of the original novel bat human coronavirus, this is the 2015 research at UNC with Dr. Ralph Barrick, NIH, and Wuhan Labs. That was the gain of function research, and so they had a SARS virus that became more lethal, more transmissible. They attempted to do a vaccine for that trial. That was a traditional vaccine, not mRNA. They had vaccine-induced harm and lethality in the animals, and in the pathology slides of those animals, this is mice, you can see the same vascular lung damage that we're seeing today with SARS-2.
So they knew all of this. They
Yes.
knew this.
Yes.
They knew this.
Yes.
And
This
yet
was
they
knowable.
lied to us. They rolled this out. Billions were made. They called it safe and effective. They mandated it, and they knew this.
That is correct, Senator.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. In closing, I just want to say I appreciate all the being here today. My opening statement, I think, still stands. Vaccines for smallpox, polio, measles, whooping cough have all saved lives, and they've been proven safe and effective. If you have criticisms of the clinical trials or the studies, I'd be interested in hearing or seeing them, but America should know that the safe and effective standard of the FDA means something, and that the perils of failing to help your children and protect them with these vaccines can be very great. Just in defense of doctors, I don't think I need to defend them, but according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, most doctors lose money on administering vaccines. They do it because they believe it has public health benefits. That's what the American Pediatric Academy says. I hope that we can work together on measures that will prevent misrepresentation just in word.
Thanks for joining in
And
again.
again,
Thanks for joining in. Phone keep
my
going
thanks,
out.
Mr. Chairman.
Apologize.
I have to go to another commitment at 5 o'clock, and we have a vote at 5:30, so we're coming to the close.
I live in
Appreciate
Rockford,
your
where I say about which poor
I've
red
got a
state I
lot more
live in.
questions,
I'm in
so
Chicago. I mean, I
thanks
live
for attending.
from Chicago, but I live in Illinois
Dr. Hooker,
and Rockford.
can you
Mm.
talk
Yes,
a
sir.
little bit about, because I know Bobby Kennedy asked Fauci one time, who claimed that the vaccines have been tested against placebos.
I live in Rockford now, but I'm from
Fauci made a
Chicago.
big show of looking through all these documents, so I guess I didn't bring that particular study. Can you talk about whether or not any of the vaccines on the childhood schedule have ever been tested against a true placebo?
In terms of FDA trials, in the Center for Biologics Evaluations and Research under the FDA, there has never been a clinical trial on a childhood vaccine that has had a true saline placebo. The only saline placebos that were done were on the COVID-19 shots, and those
Like and
placebos
subscribe.
basically
Thanks for
were
joining in.
essentially null and void because they started to offer the vaccine itself to the control group within 10 to 14 weeks of the start of the trial. So no, there are no placebo-controlled trials that use a true placebo.
previous hearings and events, talking to Aaron Siri, he really does lay out a pretty shocking, a bunch of facts in terms of the very small period of some of
Like
these
and
trials. Of some
subscribe.
of these
Thanks for
vaccines.
joining in.
Can you comment on that?
Yes, if you look at the clinical
Somebody
trials that
said
were done, say for example, by the
which poor red
hepatitis
state
B
you
vaccine,
from?
some of the clinical trials
Once again from Illinois.
looked at adverse
Chicago,
events
but I live in
after the
Rockford now.
vaccine in a duration of 48 hours. Some of the vaccines regarding Haemophilus influenza B and the DTaP vaccine, the window for adverse events was 4 days or 5 days. And so we know that many serious adverse events obviously happen after that window. So these serious adverse events within 48 hours, 4 days, 5 days, they would not be recorded, completely opaque from the public and from the FDA.
So for the COVID trials, they basically inoculated, they injected the placebo group, so we don't have a control group anymore.
No, we have no long-term
We have no
studies.
data, and even there, it sounded like they doctored the trial data. They delayed reporting some of the deaths. There were actually more deaths in the injection arm of the trial, placebo arm. Is that correct, Dr. Sullivan? You're shaking your head?
That is completely correct. And I only learned that later, maybe a year after, but there were more deaths in the treatment group than the placebo group.
That wasn't exactly publicized in the corporate media.
No.
I wouldn't call a trial that lasted 48 hours or 4 days an extensive test. Would you, Dr. Hooker?
Not at all.
The VAERS system, what was it? It was a Harvard study conducted, correct? That showed
Yes.
what, 1%? I guess they estimated about 1% of all vaccine injuries are actually reported to VAERS.
That is correct, about 1%. This was you're referring to a study by Ross Lazarus et al. From the Harvard Pilgrim Medical Group. It was a study actually sponsored by the CDC themselves, and they estimated that about 1% or less of all vaccine adverse events were being captured by VAERS.
So what do you estimate the rate of vaccine injury? You've done a lot of studying on this.
Absolutely, and I think going back to that same publication, again, it's CDC dollars, and they found that in their study group, they looked at the Harvard Pilgrim HMO over 3 years, and they looked at every individual needle stick, and they found that there were, for every 39 needle sticks, there was one serious adverse event. So that's 1 in 39. It's not 1 in a million. It's not 1 in 2 million. It's 1 in 39 needle sticks. Now, when you factor in the fact that over that 3-year period, many people got more than one vaccine, then the serious adverse event rate per person was 1 in 10.
So I would re-recommend the Substack from Toby Rogers titled Mapping the Entire Field of Autism Causation Studies in One Article. It was very eye-opening for me. I know this is the most toxic subject, autism and vaccines. But it's true. I mean, when I was growing up, I'm 70 years old now, I'd never even heard the word autism. And I know you can probably doctor statistics, you can kind of doctor charts. I'm actually pretty good at charts.
Thanks for joining
the
in.
charts you see,
Like and subscribe.
instances of autism seem to really escalate after 1986.
Vaccine free here. No COVID shot.
Of vaccine. So again, does it prove causation? No, but man, it is a correlation.
Pure blood.
Ought not to be ignored. And when you read that Substack by Toby Rogers, you realize this has not only been ignored, but design all these studies, spent billions of dollars to find the genetic component causing autism. Don't find it.
Thanks
But you don't
for subscribing. Thank you for
separate
subscribing.
your study subjects between the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. Can somebody comment just in terms of what we found with the Amidst population?
Yes, sir. The Amish population, there was a whole group of studies called articles that were done by an AP reporter, Dan Olmsted, and he found that the only autism that he saw in Amish subjects were those children who were adopted by Amish families who had been previously vaccinated.
Again, an interesting correlation, huh? Dr. Sullivan, I really would recommend you read Dissolving Illusions, Turtles All the Way Down. I think the main point made in those books is that improved sanitation dramatically eradicated a lot of these childhood diseases before vaccine has ever hit the stage. And again, that doesn't mean that vaccines didn't eradicate the tail end of that. But
I'm in agreement. I'm completely aware of that. And it's a very complex subject. And I should clarify, I'm enthusiastic about vaccination that works.
But how do you say, again, because
we don't know. We don't know.
That's the point.
I think Senator Blumenthal's point
describe that though. Describe why we don't know.
So, I think to back up, we're referring to there's a social benefit to vaccination. It's hard to define. It's the herd immunity. We all benefit from less disease in society, but we haven't looked at that there is a cost to doing that, and that is going to be harms, and those harms have not been systematically investigated or tabulated. So that's the first point. And then, as I would say that success has led to excess, and so the low-hanging fruit, the success has been in the older diseases. And then with influenza, I think it's an excellent topic where there are other ways to treat influenza. You can treat it with antivirals. And what is worrisome to me is that the flu vaccine, at best, was 60% effective. We've been trying this since the 1930s. What does that mean, 60% effective? There are 1 or 2% of the population gets serious flu once a year, or that's about it. A 60% effectiveness implies you have to give about 70 shots to prevent one flu case. And we look at it in medical populations. It doesn't save hospitalizations or deaths off from work. Worrisomely, is each year that effectiveness seems to be decreasing. It was down to 20%, and last year it became negative. There was negative efficacy of 27% with the flu shot, implying that perhaps 1 in 4 cases were actually caused by the intervention. And we all want to prevent deaths from flu. I've had the flu. I will do a lot to avoid it. But there are other ways to do this.
So I got sucked into this whole conversation as Chairman of Homeland Security when during COVID, I was holding hearings on early treatment. We didn't have a vaccine then. Again, I was hearing about what they were talking about, and it kind of concerned me. So, why aren't we exploring all these existing drugs, generic, they're cheap, they've been pretty safe. Again, no drug is totally safe. And we completely blew it off. So again, I personally, I would like to see the medical establishment, I'd like to see our federal health agencies devote a lot of time and effort into treating disease as opposed to funneling all this money into, again, the almost religious belief in the efficacy of vaccines. I will enter in the record, check it out. For the last 20 years, the average efficacy of the flu vaccine is 40%. I didn't see the negative efficacy, but I did
that's
see...
from Cleveland Clinic last year. That's a study on 50,000 of their employees. That may be a preprint study, but that is worrisome for this coming flu season.
I mean, we did see studies that
Thanks for joining in.
for the COVID injection as well.
Yes,
again,
we did.
All that kind of information was dismissed. What I would like to give all the witnesses an opportunity, just if something you didn't say or something somebody else said that you want to comment, I'm happy to have that. Have you do that. We'll start with Ms. Tarsal, please.
Yes, thank you. As a follow-up to a discussion about bears and to what you asked me about what I learned after my daughter died, I was stunned that the FDA did not follow up, that there's no real investigation. I was stunned that on the CDC website, they said deaths have been investigated and have been found to due to other causes. When I knew not only my daughter's death, but other deaths had not been investigated or found to be due to other causes. And through a FOIA request, I got all reports about that bears reports on my daughter's case. Merck, the manufacturer, had filed a report claiming my daughter died from a viral infection. There was no evidence that she had died of a viral infection. I spent a year communicating with Merck. Why did they say that? What's their evidence? They said my doctors told them that. So I went to my doctors. I got letters from the doctors stating that no one, neither they nor anyone on their staff, had ever reported that my daughter died from a viral infection. Yet Merck has that not only in the VAERS report, but on a system called the Worldwide Adverse Event System that is available to doctors. And I guess doctors look at that to get an update on vaccine injuries or concerns. And once it's dead there, they never remove it, even if it's inaccurate information. So I think that's another area in terms of what information is available from authorities, what information is available to doctors from the manufacturer, and what information we get from informed consent. Very big areas that need to be investigated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stein.
Thank you again, Senator Johnson, for letting me speak. I wanted to thank everybody again who's at this table sharing their experiences. I know it's really tough to do. And
Thanks for joining in. Like and subscribe.
No
Here,
loss
blood here.
should
I need to
ever
get a
happen.
vaccine.
It's a very sad
The
thing.
ones who got it, I pray that they
I
be
feel for
okay
you guys. I
and
feel for
all
everybody
be
at this
well.
table who has suffered that. And I just want to make a point about the influenza antivirals. We know antivirals need to be prescribed very quickly once people are diagnosed with flu, and that oftentimes antivirals are not effective after the first 24 hours that people feel symptoms. So, we have to think about the fact that, yes, we want to be able to treat and make sure everybody is healthy, but we also have to think about the logistics of this as well, in addition to just saying, it's easy to say, be able to get treated and everybody should be fine afterwards, but we have to think about the logistics and the reality that is not all antivirals are going to be super effective, and not all flu treatment and all vaccine preventable disease treatments are going to be 100% effective all the time.
I understand. That's why I want to put more effort into researching for treatment. Dr. Hooker.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. As a parent of a vaccine-injured child, I've been to DC many, many times. I cannot travel with a vaccine-injured son to the extent that obviously it needs to happen. I am competing against a pharmaceutical lobby of 1,600 lobbyists. That's 3 lobbyists for each member of Congress, and millions of dollars that are being exchanged into campaign coffers, into C4s. This is insane. It cannot continue on. And the individuals, I'm so thankful for you. I'm so thankful for being recognized as a parent of a vaccine-injured child who spends anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 a year out of pocket, unreimbursable medical, for having this particular voice. But really, one of the things that has always been very, very difficult and very, very discouraging is coming up against the big pharma lobby, which is almost 3 times bigger than the next biggest competitor.
You're outgunned. And again, I was actually very pleased to hear Senator Blumenthal with an open mind toward what we need to do with that compensation fund for both normal vaccines as well as the COVID injection fund is a joke. I mean, it's awful. And,
absolutely.
Okay. Dr. Sullivan.
2 points with VAERS, and I know you like charts. If we were to go to 2019 and I were to show you a chart of the adverse event reports to VAERS, there were about 20,000 reports for all vaccines, including flu vaccines. In 2021, 2022, if I made that chart a foot high so you could see it from there.
We had it last hearing.
Oh, did you? Yeah. It would go 50 feet high. I mean, it literally went from 20,000 to over 1 million. The other key point about VAERS, and we've talked about the underreporting factor of at least 40, maybe 100, we don't know for sure. It is reactive. No, it's not proactive. And it absolutely will not catch a novel complication. I cannot state that strongly enough. It will miss any novel complications. We have a novel gene therapy, a novel therapeutic, a novel virus, and we have novel complications. Thank you.
First of all, thank you again for today and listening to us. I just want to reiterate the paediatricians being paid to, or getting bonuses, certainly for vaccinating our children. They are our first line as we go in with our precious babies. And many of these young parents, they look at them for the research. When it says do your own research, that's where they go. So if you want Children's Health Centre to do some more research on that to get you the truth about the bonuses, we really need to look into that. Because that's, again, is what I think is killing a lot of these babies and children. It's the paediatricians and their advice, their lies.
Well, to me, that's just a huge conflict of interest.
Exactly.
It just is. Ms. Marana.
Again, thank you for having me here today. And again, I am very deeply moved by the other stories here, my fellow witnesses. Number one, as a parent, one of my goals since losing my son Joseph is to I'm not here to debate the science. The science is clear. Do these rare events happen? Absolutely. And there are folks here beside me sharing their experiences. And again, do not want to diminish those. But I think we have to really focus on the safety. And I've heard VAERS a couple times today. I just want to remind folks that there are other parts of the U.S. safety monitoring system, like the Vaccine Safety Data Link, CISA. VAERS is not the only part of that safety monitoring system. And I did want to just round back on the flu vaccine effectiveness. When Dr. Sullivan quotes upwards of 60%, it's really to understand what that measurement endpoint is. And when we talk about 40 to 60%, it means against medically attended illness. If we would like to look at other endpoints, and that's really what flu vaccination is about, it's really good at preventing severe outcomes like hospitalization, disability, and death. And if we look at the figures for the 24-25 season, the preliminary vaccine effectiveness, and these are interim numbers, the final ones will come out from CDC in September, 63 to 78% effective in kids against hospitalization. So I think it's also important as a scientist that I point out that when we are talking about statistics and numbers, that we put those into context, and there are different measurement endpoints when it comes to vaccine effectiveness. So again, I'm a mom, that's why I'm here today. I'm trying to prevent from happening to other people, but I certainly appreciate, and I also am very moved to hear you and Senator Blumenthal talking about collaborating on VICP and Vaccinate Your Family. We definitely think there can be improvements as well. We put out a State of the Union report earlier this year that has some specific things that Congress can do. So I'm very excited to see that conversation moving forward. And again, thank you for your time and having me here today.
Thank you for your testimony.
And when you have the pharmaceutical companies that are selling the drugs, also teaching the doctors what needs to happen, you're having a broken system. You're having these doctors that are coming out of medical school, just like Dr. Sullivan said, where all you learned about vaccines was to memorize the schedule. You didn't learn about how to recognize the illnesses, and that's part of the problem. If we have something that is trying to prevent these illnesses, there's no 100%. These illnesses are still going to be around. Why are these doctors not being taught how to recognize these illnesses and a proper treatment protocol to help prevent any kind of adverse effects from those illnesses? So we may be focusing on vaccinations, but we still have to focus on the diseases at hand because they will never be completely eliminated. And without that complete elimination, we still have to have the education there. And if we don't have that proper education and proper treatment plan in place, we're going to continue having both sides of where we have children that have passed from the illness. And then if we do not have procedures put in place and we do not have that true
like and subscribe.
studies done
Thanks for joining in.
to show the true safety and effectiveness, then we're going to continue to see our children be damaged and killed by the very thing that we are trying to protect our children in this world for. So thank you for allowing me to come here and to speak for all of the other parents that were not able to be here to speak from decades ago even. They matter, their children's voices matter, and I'm here to make sure that we make changes happen. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you all for your very important and I'd say powerful testimony. On purpose, we sprinkled the witnesses together. We didn't just have 2 on one side and 5 on another. I'm hoping we bridge the gap. These are all true stories. They're all heartbreaking. There are good points made, I think, on all sides. And what we're trying to seek is the truth. We want to know exactly what's happening. We want integrity restored to science. We want our federal health agencies. We want doctors, advocating for their patients, first and foremost. So again, there are a lot of issues we discussed. Again, I also am pleased with Senator Blumenthal's willingness to work with me on some solutions. Again, I don't think there are a whole lot of solutions come from the federal government, but there are certain things we do have to do. We're up to our necks in this one, so I think there's an awful lot we can do, but it starts with understanding what the reality is, what the truth is. And again, I think you've really added to the conversation in a very constructive way. I think this was, from my standpoint, a very good hearing. I truly appreciate everybody's attendance. There may be other people with other stories to tell. I think if you're vaccine injured or know somebody who is, I think certainly Children's Health Defense. You can certainly contact my subcommittee's webpage. We have a whistleblower account. You can go on there and click here and enter your story. I hope people don't abuse that, but you're certainly welcome to do that. The hearing record will remain open 15 days until July 30th at 5 p.m. for the submission of statements and questions for the record. Thank you all. This hearing is adjourned. I want to welcome everybody to the hearing room. I appreciate your attendance. I certainly want to welcome all our witnesses. I know your stories will be hard to tell, but I truly appreciate you making the time and willing to share your stories. In our first hearing of this Congress titled The Corruption of Science and Federal Health Agencies, How Health Officials Downplayed and Hid Myocarditis and Other Adverse Events Associated with the COVID-19 Injections, I asked Dr. Joel Walscock, an orthopedic surgeon injured by the COVID injections, to describe how those suffering from COVID injection injuries felt. His one-word answer: abandoned. The purpose of today's hearing, titled Voices of the Vaccine Injured, is very simple: to give a platform to those individuals.
I'm going to stop it there, you guys. I appreciate you guys, you know what I'm saying, tuning in. Once again, I'm Deon, Writing Brave podcast show. I'm going to do another live video later on today. Thanks for joining in. Peace.